When I look out 12 months ahead, Ken, I'm always like, what risks am I engineering into my life that are just completely ridiculous? That it's just like, how could you ever think about doing that? Because if I don't do that, I'm not going to have any wins. Because by definition, I play it safe. And so I now, thanks to people like Dan, I look at the next 12 months and I think, man, if you're not doing something crazy, you got nothing to look forward to, and you're not going to have any wins.
I was completely thrilled when I had this opportunity to meet this guy in Dubai, because I've watched his stuff. Actually, because of him, I got to meet Dan Pena. I got to meet a lot of people because he's interviewed them. He's interviewed people that just blow my mind. And I've been at this for a long time. And when I met him, he was exactly what I hoped to be. And that is a guy that wasn't just audacious, but super knowledgeable, but kind. I'm talking about Brian Rose. You may have seen him on London Real. Brian is based in London and also in Dubai, and I'm so happy that you're joining me today. Thanks a lot, Brian.
Thanks for having me, Ken. Really appreciate that. I still remember meeting you, and you're bringing back memories of Dan Pena by just mentioning his name.
He's a trip. He really is. But you know what? He is who he is. I mean, there is no faking who Dan Pena is, right?
I always say, you know, when they made Dan Pena, they broke the mold. And once Dan Pena passes, there'll be never another one like him. He's like a throwback to Ernest Hemingway, where men were men, and he doesn't care. He doesn't have a product to sell you. He's just going to be himself. And, you know, he's probably the guy that people stop me on the streets and ask about more than anything, Ken, because he's like your grandpa that we all used to have that would just give it to you straight, no matter what, didn't care what you thought of that. And that's what Dan is to most people. And he usually reminds people that they're not doing enough, they're not going hard enough. And I think that's why he resonates with people.
My father would always say, your true friends will make you cry, meaning the real ones will tell you the truth, even if it hurts.
Oh my gosh. I mean, Dan has dressed me down in my London Real episodes, but that's nothing compared to what he does in person. I mean, we've been out to restaurants in London where he's yelling at the top of his lungs in a 2-star Michelin restaurant, and his wife Sally's like, Dan, take it easy. She's like, leave him alone, Sally. He can handle this. And he's going off. Or I remember going to see him at the castle, and after dinner, I have to go lay down in the floor of my room and think, oh my God, my life is so much worse than I thought it was. Because he just goes hard. He doesn't know how, and I think that's how he shows his love. So yeah, bless him.
Well, like I said, that was a catalyst for me to really follow you and what you've done. And it's interesting too, because you allow all kinds of voices to come into your environment. You allow people that are extreme, maybe some people that are not even understood or hated, but you give them that voice to be heard. And because of that, different platforms have censored you, haven't they?
Yeah, you know, it's strange because a lot of times when the guest is in the chair, I'm wondering why the heck are they even on my show? Including Pena, the first time he came in 2014, I was like, I don't like this guy. Why is he here? Mantak Chia talking about sexual energy. I was like, I'm barely holding my comfort as he's talking about sharpening your sword. But I always find, Ken, over time, I find myself changing my mind and agreeing with him. So yeah, I try to put people in the chair I don't agree with and I'm uncomfortable with. And you're right, some people are so extreme that we've been taken off platforms and banned from YouTube for years on end. So yeah, it also comes with some pain.
I realized that, especially during the COVID times, you were deplatformed. You had to come up with creative ways to still allow your content to get out there by actually creating your own platform or partnering. Do you think the worst times were actually some of your most important times?
Man, I mean, look, in 2020, when we started pushing back on the COVID narrative in kind of March, April 2020, we had a real public battle with YouTube, and it was really painful, and they were taking our videos down, and I thought they were going to take everything I worked for 10 years away, and it was really, really painful. And then they took a little bit of a break with us, and then in 23, they took our whole channel down, and it was 14,000 videos, 500 million views, and more importantly, like, my whole life, like every expression I ever gave to the universe, including episodes that changed people's lives, it disappeared. It's like what they used to do in ancient Venice when they would erase one of the doges. The ultimate punish was to erase you from memory, to where you never even existed before. And that's the way I felt. So it was really hard, but we just kept pushing, you know, and just tried not to dwell on it. And now 25 months later, we got replatformed about 2 weeks ago, and it's a nice feeling to see everything you've ever created back up. But it's also a reminder that you got to keep going. You know, if you never quit, then you will always win. And that was one of those times where we just kept going, you know. It was hard.
Brian, you've always been pure to who you are too. Even though others would say you're wrong or they're naysayers, you still persevered and moved forward, even though they were hindering you and hurting you.
You know, there's a podcaster in Dubai we both know very well, and he had me on his show, and he said, Brian, clearly that was the biggest mistake you ever made. And I was like, actually, I think it was our most defining moment, because when people stop me on the streets, they thank me for broadcasting those messages during lockdown. When everyone was confused, we gave them a ray of hope that maybe all of this was kind of BS. And people to this day can, 5 years later, still stop me and thank me for that. And so I think it was our finest hour. And yet, when you look back on your life, at the time, sometimes your finest hour will feel like your most painful moment. And so I learned a lot from that. And, you know, just sticking to our guns and just sticking to our principles no matter what. And now I have a little mistrust over anyone who wasn't deplatformed during that time. So, yeah.
They went with the system. Hey, Brian, you are in your 50s. To me, you're a young guy. You're younger than me. But you do some crazy stuff, at least in my mind. In your 50s, you decided, hey, what the heck? I'm going to get into the ring. And I'm not talking about the ice skating ring. You're in, is it MMA or is it boxing? What are you doing?
Boxing. It's boxing. Yeah.
Why?
You know, so I've always been really hard on myself, Ken. I've always been, when I wake up every morning, I say to myself subconsciously, what have you done for me lately? And I'm very hard to impress. And it's a bug and a feature, as Elon Musk would say. And so for my early years, I think I was so hard on myself that I ended up having to drink and medicate myself with drugs and get away from my own brain. But once I got through that, I realized that, you know, maybe it was a feature, not a bug. And so I'm always looking back over my years saying, Brian, did you really go hard? Did you push yourself? Did you go to the extreme? Did you impress the hardest judge in the world, which is actually me, right? One below Dan Pena, right? You know, or one above Dan Pena. And so I'm always thinking, like, what can I do that would make me think, you know what, yeah, you did okay this year, Brian. You know, you can stay on the planet another year. And I trained martial arts since I was 30, and I never had a fight. And, you know, it's a disconnect there. And finally, I thought to myself, this is the time. And so there's an event called Crypto Fight Night, and I lobbied them for like a year. And I said, I need a guy that's older with no fights. And they came back with a 27-year-old kid with a bunch of fights. And I had no choice, and I said, sign me up. And so it was definitely one of the scariest things I've ever done. 24 hours before, I had a real dark moment. And but I showed up, and it was one of the most proudest moments I've ever been in myself. So, and here's the crazy thing, Ken, is that when I was 40, I wasn't prepared to do that. Physically, I was maybe in better shape, but mentally, I wasn't prepared to put myself in that much of an unknown situation and deal with potential damage or humiliation. But now in my 50s, I'm ready to do that. And that's a very strange thing, but yeah, that's what I did. And then I did a second one. So yeah.
And you had a second one then too. That was a kid from Singapore, right?
He was actually from South Africa. He was 6'3", 19 years old. He hit like a ton of bricks. And every time I try to get somebody older, they give someone younger. But it was great. It was the first time I was tested. He hit me hard, but by the third round, I was hitting him back. Most people gave me the third round and maybe the second round. So yeah, it was a great way to test my will. And my old martial arts instructor, he always said, Brian, you learn a lot about yourself when you get into a fight. And it's true.
But you're in fights all the time, not just this type of fight. You're in fights with, like I said, censoring. You're in fights with the way you think, because you think way outside the box. You are constantly in some type of battle.
It's true, but then it's not obvious that would cross over to the ring when someone's punching you in the face. But in this case, I guess it did. But you're right. I guess maybe I'm always looking for a fight. Maybe. I hate to admit that.
I think you are, actually, because
I think you're right.
You do things not to be like everybody else. You are definitely, you wear a tie often, okay? Which, you know, I admire you. I think it's great. You have your own brand, which is it radiates. When Brian Rose walks in, you know Brian Rose is there. It radiates. The passions you have are unusual. You break dance. You break dance. You do videos of you breakdancing on Instagram.
Yes, I do.
So I kind of want to ask you this. Living an audacious life, because I think you're audacious, and that's a compliment, by the way, okay? Being audacious. What are some rules that you probably don't even think that you do, that you probably will teach your own kids to do, to be audacious and not be fearful of being yourself?
So I guess I'm trying to go into my fear. I'm trying to do something that is, like you said, so audacious and so scary that, when I'm done with it, I'll be proud of myself. That's number one. The other one, and I learned a lot of this from Dan Pena, is that, you need to engineer risk into your life if you want to accomplish anything important. And that's true about your business. That's true about everything. And so when I look out 12 months ahead, Ken, I'm always like, what risks am I engineering into my life that are just completely ridiculous? That it's just like, how could you ever think about doing that? Because if I don't do that, I'm not going to have any wins. Because by definition, I play it safe. Jen used to make fun of me. I'm an engineer from MIT, and they teach you how to make sure that the cars don't explode and the bridges don't fall and the planes don't come out of the sky. So you're taught to be conservative. And I think most of us are. And so I now, thanks to people like Dan, I look at the next 12 months and I think, man, if you're not doing something crazy, you got nothing to look forward to, and you're not going to have any wins. So now I'm starting to get restless. It's been 4 weeks since my fight, and I'm already thinking, man, I need another fight, even though I don't want another fight. But I know I need something. And that's why I ran for mayor of London, and that's why I did all these crazy things, because I thought, I don't know, I have the desire, and I know it's how I continue the wins going. So that's what I think about. I try to engineer risk into my life, and guess what happens? It's never as bad as I thought it was going to be. I thought, honestly, I was going to wake up in a hospital on my first boxing match. I thought my kids wouldn't have a father anymore. But that's because my brain, your brain takes you to all these crazy places. But I was fine. It was like a sparring session. So I think so many times we overestimate the downside and we underestimate the upside. So I'm just continuing to do this. And then sometimes I get burned and I get deplatformed from YouTube for 25 months. But then no one died, and then I guess we came back. So that's what I'm thinking, Ken.
So when you look at your kids, your father, your super dad, I completely admire that. Do you want them to have audacious thinking also?
My boys are 8 and 9 years old. They're two of the greatest gifts in my life. I was that bachelor that was never going to have kids, and thank God my missus, forced me to have them. She held me down one night and made me have them. And so they're two beautiful gifts, and I had them later in life. So I was 47 when I first became a father, and as opposed to when I was 27 and I could barely handle myself. So I think I'm more appreciative of them now. And I try to teach them things, but one of the reasons I wanted to box was I wanted to show them that their father was out there pushing himself. What do they say with kids? They don't do as they say, they do as you do. And even if they didn't understand it, I thought to myself, Ken, one day when they're 17 or 27 or 37 or 47, long after I'm gone, maybe they'll watch that video and be inspired to do something like that. And that's what I'm part of me is thinking that, for sure.
Guys, everyone that's watching this, let me just make a suggestion, okay? You want to go find Brian, but you also want to get Brian to moderate your event or speak at your event. And the reason why is because he makes the crowd be part of what's happening. He doesn't allow people to be passive. He gets them to be active. And that, by the way, that's not a talent. That's an inherent, I would say, something that it's part of your DNA. It is something that's just amazing. And I'm just honored to have you join us today. People want to hunt you down, Brian. What's the best way for them to find you?
A website, londonreal.tv. That's where all our content is. And our brand is London Real. They can find us on YouTube, and we're on Instagram and all those good things. So yeah, that's probably the best way to find us. And yeah, live events, man. I love getting in people's faces, and I love just making it count. I think it's important to make every day count.
There you go. Brian, thanks a lot for hanging out.
Thanks, Ken.